This week I want to talk about lost waters. I fished for many decades and it's easy to remember that there were many waters that I fished in the long distance past, sometimes the not very distant past, that are no longer available. The reasons for that are many, but the commonest reasons are that waters change hands, so that clubs leasing waters suddenly find they can no longer lease that water. The owner wants the fishing for themselves or doesn't want anyone fishing it. Sometimes waters die of neglect. A club decides, or whoever is renting it decides it's not worth renting anymore. The fishing is poor, their members aren't fishing it enough. It's become too neglected and overgrown. The fish have gone due to predation like cormorants or otters, pollution, and people look back with great memories and say, wow, that was a fantastic water 30 years ago, but they say never go back, and they do go back and they have a look and they think, what went wrong? So many things went wrong. On the stour of waters that I could fish 10, 20, 30 years ago, there's probably 8 to 10 miles now that are no longer available. Some of that's due to changing hands. Some of it is due to the clubs just don't want it anymore. It's just not worth fishing, not worth the rent. One or two bits, the clubs are trying to get it back because it's changed hands and they've yet to reach an agreement. Although after sort of 4 or 5 years, you do wonder if they're going to be able to reach an agreement. I think the money's there, but it's getting the willingness of the owners to let them go on there. Sometimes waters go on to syndicates. Someone decides that having hundreds of anglers able to fish a water is too much hassle. They'd rather have a dozen dedicated people who they know who they are, and they're willing to let those people come on it, but not all and sundry. That hasn't happened very much. The biggest example is the Sumley Estate, which was Christchurch Angling Club for many years. Going back many years, Ringwood had some parts of Sumley Estate and parts of it were day ticket as well. But eventually, for whatever reason, the estate decided it would prefer to go to syndicates. A lot less people, same money, possibly better kept water, I don't know. One thing that I do remember from my past growing up around Wareham is that I didn't have a car, and there were a number of waters that were within cycling distance. I'm talking little still waters, often 1/4 of an acre, 1/2 an acre, little old sand pits and clay pits. Most of them still exist. Whether they've got any fish in or whether they'd actually be worth fishing is another matter, but they are in existence. In some cases, I haven't fished them for over 40 years. And like I say, whether the cormorants have descended on them and cleaned them out, that's possible. I don't think there's one possible water where someone might be fishing it still. I think for the most part, they're just unfished and unwanted. They may well be grown in from trees. And I don't think anyone would be that bothered about renting them. I don't think they've got that much potential on the sort of fishing that people want to do nowadays. One water that's close to one of those that I've never fished and went on a few times was sold about 20 years ago. And that was available as a fishery to members of a leisure complex associated with the owners. But the last time I looked on Google Earth, I don't think you can get in there. It seemed to have paddle boards on it. Great. Not a fan. Other places further afield. I can remember in the sort of 60s and 70s on the Thames, on the Upper Thames, there was a great deal of worry from the local sort of, for instance, the Oxford clubs, that big clubs would come down and outbid them for their fishing. So clubs like Coventry or the Birmingham angling clubs would come and have waters on the Thames, and they did so. But as times passed, maybe anglers weren't that bothered about travelling 80, 90, 100-mile round trips for reasonable or average fishing, and they've just given up, and those waters are now available again to local clubs in some cases, or not available at all. So this evolution of waters goes on all the time. 50 years ago, there are waters that I fish now didn't exist in some cases. They hadn't been dug out, hadn't been created. Some are sand and gravel pits or clay pits. Others are purpose-built waters that people have got a bit of land and said, I can make a fishery out of this, and they've dug them out from scratch. Surprising how old some of these waters are now. Waters I remember being dug 50 years ago, and now they look mature and they've been redug out and had silt problems and all sorts of problems. But these waters continue to be created. I've fished at Todber Manor over quite a few years. I don't know. That started off with a couple of ponds on a couple of small fields by a road, and now it's got something like a dozen. They're called ponds in Dorset. People call them lakes, but they're ponds. If you want to know what a lake is, go and find Creekmore Lake. Nothing to do with Creekmore Pond or ponds. Good luck with fishing Creekmore Lake or Litchett Lake or Upton Lake. I'll leave that one to you. You'll need an Ordnance Survey map to find those. A lake is a creek in Dorset. So if you ever see something called a lake and it's really a pond in Dorset, it means someone who's not from Dorset has named it. But there we have it. A changing world where waters are lost, access is lost because people don't want the hassle, or people can't be bothered to fish it. I'd like to ask you, have you lost many of your local waters, and where are they, and why have you lost them? See if there's a common thread to all of this. Until next time, it's goodbye for now.